everybody. Welcome to the Energy News Beat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. I got us a gigantic treat today. We have Captin Kieran Kelly, and I mean, this is phenomenal. I've been stalking him on LinkedIn and around, and he finally said yes to coming on the podcast. And he's with Ocean Integrity. And I'll tell you what, you've got some great things going on out there, Captain. Thank you for stopping by.
Hey, good morning. Good morning from Indonesia. Good to speak with you.
Oh, I'll tell you, you sit back, and we were just chit-chatting before the show, and you're really, I was like, hey, what's important to you? And it's like everything. I mean, Captain, you do everything, and you're over in Indonesia, and you're the largest depolluter, if you would. Is depolluting a word where you're picking up the plastics out of the ocean? Tell us what you're doing there.
Well, we operate globally, tackling plastic waste. We look at the problems, of course, that we face today. The two single biggest problems we have, of course, globally, poverty and, of course, pollution. And, of course, one kind of feeds off the other, right? So some years back, again, my background is very different than what you would consider an environmentalist. I'm in the environmental space. I'm very passionate about the environment, but very passionate about it in a practical way. Doing the right thing, but doing something that actually makes sense. Instead of just writing and spending all kinds of money on mindless policies that are not going to work, there's no way possible for these to work, but do something like, that is, of course, that is tangible. So we started looking some years back at the problem of plastic waste. Initially, it was in the US. We were going targeting at the backside of hurricanes to scoop up the plastic waste as the runoff came off the islands and off the mainland.
Right.
That was the whole idea. Shortly after that, we were asked to look at a problem in India. India went from India to Africa. Africa, of course, like to where I am today in Indonesia. We're a very, very different organization. Very, very pro-business. Look at ways how we can help corporations to fulfill their goals. And we do that by fighting poverty at the same time eliminating plastic waste.
Captain, you're hitting every single one of my hot buttons. This is cool. Now, how do you fight poverty while you're cleaning the oceans?
Well, we looked at, again, I come from the commercial fishing industry. I had commercial fishing companies on the east and west coast of the United States. I also had them through Central and South America. That was my day job, for years and years and years. And I was very good at harvesting seafood. People like me actually have no business on the ocean. I was very, very good at what I did. And of course, I did it on an industrial scale, which wasn't really a clever thing to be doing. Right. So became quite wealthy out of that, lived the American dream, made lots of money. And so I started looking at how can I give something back? How can I do the right thing?
Right.
And when I started traveling around the world doing what I'm doing now, and I've lived here actually about 5 years now, but when I started looking at the problems that we face, how can we fix these brutal problems, especially with pollution? And of course, it goes back to one thing. Fishermen, people working on the ocean can remove plastic from the ocean. The environmental world is a very, very strange place. Very fast as virtual signaling regarding problems. Also pointing fingers at people and blaming the wrong people for some of the problems we face. They have absolutely demonized the fishing industry, from an indigenous fisherman to an industrial guy like me, I guess. Years ago, my past, they put everyone in the same category and absolutely destroyed them. So one thing I found really strange, that when I went into these villages, I tried to relate to these indigenous guys. I said, hey, I'm one of ye. And they looked at this white guy that was saying he was one of them, and they didn't believe me. They saw me as an environmentalist. And there was no way they would relate to me, speak to me, deal with me. I mean, they just would not talk to me. So I saw a guy one day And the same thing happened in two countries, which is actually really unusual. And now I use that in all the villages I go into, fishing villages. So
Right.
this guy had a ripped up net and he was trying to repair this net. He was making a really poor attempt at doing that. So I
Right.
took the knife and needle off him. I said, "Excuse me, can you give me those?" And he just looked at me and handed it to me, and he was amused, I guess. So I
Yeah.
started repairing this net, and they were shocked, right? A white guy can actually do this, right? So they came along and they were just shocked. And after I repaired the net, spent the whole day repairing the net, the guy said to me, "Why do you care?" Perfect English. And I said, "I thought you couldn't speak English." And he said, "I've listened to you on the phone today. I can speak better English than you." So it was kind of a bit of tongue in cheek, which was kind of funny.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, so we started to talk, and I said, "Can you show me again, like the biggest concentrations of plastic on the ocean floor in this area?" And he
Yeah.
said, "You're an environmentalist. You've said bad things about me." He said, I'm here. I'm trying to feed my family." I said, "Listen, I'm one of ye. I'm not one of them. I'm one of ye." I said, "I come from a little fishing village in Ireland, just like yours, actually smaller." I said, "My family have been involved in the industry for multiple generations." And of course, eventually he believed me and he brought me to sea, and I was shocked at what I saw. Absolutely shocked. On the ocean floor, say just north of Jakarta or just west of Mumbai or just east of Chennai, these massive cities around the world, the
Right.
volumes of plastic on the ocean floor are staggering. Up to 7 meters here on the ocean floor. That is higher than the home you're probably sitting in, speaking to me from right now, on the ocean
Wow.
floor. Plastic, 7 meters between sediment, plastic, sediment, plastic. So we started looking at then about what kind of money are these guys earning? What do they earn
Right.
a week, a month, and so on and so forth? That's what blew my mind away. In India, these guys earn approximately $3 a day. They work 20 days a month, so they're approximately 20 days a month, some of them less. That is $60 a month they earn. So extreme poverty. We look at it here in
Wow.
Indonesia, they earn a little bit more, but not a lot more.
Right.
So we looked at Africa. We looked at the different regions around the world where we're operating, and the figures were the same, right? Just really, really, really
Right.
low ball price, I guess, salaries. So we patented different technologies then for harvesting plastic. These nets that we call MPEDs, microplastic elimination devices,
Mhm.
and where we can target plastic all the way down to 65 microns. Also, larger particles of plastic, we call them PEDs, plastic elimination devices. Again,
Okay.
keep everything very simple. So we get these guys to drag this plastic. So what we do now, we do it in a very different way. Track and trace of everything we do is crucial for us.
Okay.
So we have everything is app based. So what we did was we built this application. So this app now, say Mohammed in North Jakarta is collecting plastic. Right. First of all, we collect all Mohammed's data, his family, wife, kids, the whole lot. There's a reason for that, and I'll get back to that in a second.
Okay.
So we collect all the data. So Mohammed anyway goes in his vessel. Once he starts going through the water to collect his plastic, we're tracking him. We're tracking his movements all the time, his carbon footprint, if you want to call it that. So we're measuring his carbon footprint, how he's moving along through the ocean. Mohammed is constantly taking photographs of what he's doing, and he's uploading that photograph onto the application. He has a unique QR code that's just for Mohammed. This one collector, each collector has their own QR code. So as he's collecting this plastic and when he's going to come ashore, he sends a signal to the truck driver. So the truck driver then arrives, and the truck driver, of course, we measure the truck driver's carbon footprint coming to Mohammed because he has the application too. So then once we transfer the data to Mohammed scans, say, Ilham, say the truck driver's phone, and he transfers all the data, photographs, the latitude, longitude, all time-stamped onto his phone. The plastic then heads from there to the warehouse where it's separated, sorted. Independent auditor meets Ilham at this stage, scans the phone, takes all the data, the QR codes onto the auditor's phone. That's also taken by the warehouse. The plastic is separated into different piles for recycling.
Wow.
The QR code go from there at that stage, and it goes to with the plastic wherever it ends up. So if it ends up back in the supply chain, say it is a plastic pot, whatever it is, they can track that plastic right back to the very, very start. How we eliminate poverty. The reason we collect the data is, of course, two reasons. One of the reasons, the family reason for that, we pay now Ilham, or Mohammed, I was saying, the guy in the boat. We pay him $200 a week. So now he's earning $800 a month. Now he's going from extreme poverty right into the middle class. Now he's earning a high salary.
That's cool.
Yeah, a high salary in this part, just in any of these countries. But there's conditions. There's a lot of conditions to it. The reason we collect the family data is that to stop human trafficking, to stop child marriages. So now it is, Mohammed his kids have to go to school. They can't get married before they're 18 years of age. They have to get an education. If that doesn't happen, we remove them from the program. We kick them off the program. The kids' grades have to improve. Mohammed asked me all the time, he'd say, hey, how come you don't let me collect 2 tons of plastic a week or 3 tons of plastic a week? Because you have a family to raise. You need to make sure that your daughter is getting a good education. You have to make sure she's not going to get married as a kid. She has to get educated. She has to, again, be able to take part in the future of our global economy. She has to get a proper education to do that. You have to help her with that. We will help. We will do our part, but you have to do your part again. So you can collect 1 ton of plastic a week. That's it. Well, we will pay you $200 every week to do it. We will supply you the tools to do that. We will give you the nets, the MPEDs, the PEDs. We will give you all our technology to collect that plastic, but you will only do that 1 ton a week.
Captain, before we started, I'd said everything you're saying is right down my alley, and I'd have to give you a man hug and then hug you on the podcast. But now I'm tearing up because this is just cool. I'm sorry. Now, when you're talking business, are you selling the plastic? So this is truly a business environment in order to recycle it. Is that what you're doing with it, or is it just going into recycling at no charge? How is the money or sustainability going on in this?
Yeah, the sustainability is a couple of different fronts. What we do with corporations, right? We look at 2 different things. Okay. We look at how can we help corporations achieve their sustainability goals? Nice. How can we do that in a way that it's not going to cost the corporation any money? Right. And how can we still make money by not taking money from the corporations or costing the corporations any money? How can we make money doing that? And so we started looking at, again, say, environmental charges that corporations can push onto the end user, onto their customers for the most part. Right. We work a lot with the logistic industry. We look with the logistics companies, where the logistics companies are moving a container from A to B, whatever it is. Okay. That container from A to B, the logistics companies say they put $25 on a container. Right. They're passing that directly onto their customers. But again, for a very, very small charge of $25 or $20 or $10, whatever it may be, we're removing plastic for that. The company itself get recognition that they're actually removing this plastic. We can track and trace our plastic. Of course, independent audit, everything that we're doing, everything is uploaded on the blockchain. We track and trace everything we do. We're unique. There's nothing like us on the planet. This is cool. Nothing like us on the planet. Track and trace is crucial for us. The environmental world is corrupt to the core. Right. Yes. The greenwashing that goes on in it is unreal. So we were able to, first of all, prove what we do. That was the easy for us. Well, it wasn't easy for us. We put a lot of IT. We had to get IT involved in the whole process. But right now we can go with corporations like a beer company that's just coming on board right now. For every bottle of beer they will sell, we will take the equivalent of 20 grams of plastic from the ocean for every beer that's actually sold. It doesn't cost the beer company any money, but the beer company itself will remove tens of thousands of tons of plastic every year, hundreds of thousands of tons of plastic from the ocean every year. And of course, it doesn't cost the company any money.
No.
But the company itself, for the company taking part in this, they are true environmental heroes for doing it. And we can promote their beer. And of course, people can buy a beer to clean the ocean up instead of throwing money at corrupt environmental organizations.
Captain Kelly, you're amazing. You are an amazing, because like 4 or 5 years ago on my podcast, we were talking about Putin selling carbon credits because he had a bunch of trees sitting over in Russia. And so people were buying that. That to me seems like a scam. This is like about as real as it gets. When you have the blockchain tracking, you have a job, you're helping the economy, and you're also helping carbon credits, I think, are in that scammy range, because it still allows the people to pollute, and then they just buy it. This is different than that. 100% different.
Yeah, we're partnered with Penn State University there a few years ago. Okay. But we're partnering with a large university. I can't mention their name now, but you'll see it on LinkedIn being announced there shortly. Not too far from you, actually.
Oh, cool.
And the university itself, this is to build another layer that we actually need. I've been very vocal about the carbon space. The carbon space, again, is corrupt to the core. It's this whole thing about planting trees to offset a company's carbon footprint. They plant trees in many places around the world by flying little Cessnas or small aircraft at 3,000 or 4,000 feet, throwing saplings out the window. It is so laughable. It's unreal. And they are charging companies per sapling that they're chucking out a window. Do they survive? The vast majority, of course, no. Of course they don't. The whole space itself is corrupted to the core. What is pushing this whole green agenda is organizations like BlackRock. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street are pushing this. BlackRock, especially BlackRock. BlackRock have made it very clear, and they were public about that they would drop corporations who wouldn't invest in the ESG platforms that are actually there right now. What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. It's doing absolutely nothing for our economy. Where the transitions from wind and solar, I see wind energy being probably the single biggest threat to marine life, but we're still proceeding 100% with that. It makes absolutely no sense. When they speak about wind energy, no environmental assessments has been carried out. These wind turbines are being placed in the ocean in numbers that we have never seen structures to be in the ocean before. The problems with that is we have seen in Western Europe, again, where we operate. We saw in Denmark, inshore in Denmark, what happened because of wind energy, because of this so-called green energy, completely devastated marine life. And how it did it was really interesting. I've spoke with this. I've debated these so-called environmentalists that are really lobbyists for the offshore wind companies, which are European companies that operate in the US, by the way. But when I spoke to them, the thing that shocked me the most was that the sheer number of these platforms that are going in the ocean. In Denmark, when they built these offshore structures, what grows on the structures are filter feeders, small mussels, corals, barnacles, and the likes. All fish, when they spawn, two things happen. All the spawn, the larvae of the fish, they swim up to the higher water columns, up to that 4 and 5 meters, because the ocean floor, a lot of bad hombres on the ocean floor. Again, there are a lot of predators. So once they get closer to the surface, the wind farms are placed, of course, all the way along the shore, all the way along. So as the tide flows through these platforms, the filter feeders eat up all the larvae of the fish. So recruitment back to the ocean floor wasn't sustainable. And of course, there wasn't enough larvae, these larvae surviving, because the filter feeders were totally invasive to the areas they're actually in. There's actually international laws forbidding what we're actually doing in the US. Again, and doing it all over the world. But they say the transition is crucial, and we must do this. The problems with it is mind-boggling. We speak about oxygen. We speak about the oxygen we breathe on a daily basis. And we speak about, again, back to trees. The oxygen we breathe, over 75% of that comes from the ocean. It comes from the phytoplankton and the planktons inside in our ocean.
Yep.
The filter feeders that are on these platforms, of course, eats up the plankton, right? So the plankton that reduces CO2 and so on and so forth. So we're taking one step forward and about 4 back. I was going to say 2 back, but about 4 steps back. It's brutal what we're doing. We're killing marine life. We're damaging our ocean for a transition that doesn't make any sense. I predicted with the media there in some interviews in Europe with the last few years that energy prices prior to any conflicts, prior to any Ukraine and Russia or any of this narrative that's being portrayed by the media today, what's causing the spike in energy prices. But I predicted at the time that energy prices would spike and would increase over 100% over a 12-month period. Right. And of course, what they said to me at the time, they said, "Well, there's no proof of that." And I said, "There is." I said, "It's not sustainable." Since then, like in Europe, energy prices have increased nearly 200%. The energy price in Europe will increase at least 200% more. The same thing is going to happen in the United States. It is not sustainable. It is not sustainable. No. It's a very expensive way to produce a unit of electricity. And if you boil down the whole thing and take a step even back further, right? And look at man's effect on the climate, and look at climate change itself, and look at this whole narrative that's been portrayed, how we're actually killing our planet. Right. And when you start breaking down the numbers and looking at the numbers, none of it makes any sense. We see the single biggest threat to our planet, of course, is an unhealthy ocean. If we lose our ocean, we lose all life as we know it. Right now, it's estimated that up to 50% of the plankton is dead in our ocean. What's happening with that is the plastics itself, as it makes its way into the ocean, all the chemicals and so on and so forth that enters into our ocean, it gets diluted through the water column. As that happens, our governments made a prediction, or they made some calculations back in the 60s. They reckoned that our ocean was vast enough to absorb the amount of toxins actually going into our ocean. And they were somewhat correct, actually, with that, which is actually pretty sad to say. But they were actually somewhat correct. So, but what they never accounted for was, and of course, nobody knew about plastics, microplastics, nanoplastics. As the plastics float around inside the ocean, all the toxins inside the ocean attaches itself to these small particles of plastic. Wow. Now, as the larvae of these fish, and as well as that, like the plankton and stuff, as it rises to the surface in the hours of darkness to feed, it looks at these particles as a form of food. And of course, it eats it. Once it eats it, the plankton, of course, it's like eating a poisonous pill. It kills it. Of course, and the problem right now is it's estimated by multiple universities around the world right now that up to 1% of plankton a year is dying. There is some brutal problems. I'm not an alarmist. I'm certainly not far from that. But one thing that I've seen, I've looked at whale sharks, and I've looked at basking sharks and whale sharks inside their ocean. One thing I've seen there with the last couple of years, how skinny they're starting to get. I'm actually going to be posting a video on LinkedIn later today about this. Okay. And we see these giant, big, beefy basking sharks that once used to be big, beefy sharks. Now they're really skinny creatures, pure skin and bone. The reason for that is plankton. There's not enough food inside the ocean. I saw on the south coast of Ireland, again, the country of my birth. I'm a US citizen, but again, the country of my birth in Ireland, where we used to get shoals of mackerel used to come into the south coast to feed every year. And of course, mackerel, they're filter feeders also. The mackerel haven't arrived on the south coast of Ireland now with over 20 years in any numbers. They're gone. They moved. They were just completely displaced. They're in the other areas, of course, but the fish, the marine life in that area is after being devastated already. Again, the plankton, the whole life cycle, there is disappearing in that areas. In that area. And of course, I see massive amounts of fish are moving. Is water temperature increasing? Yes. Is it creating a problem in the ocean? 100%, most definitely. Are we seeing there an increase in water temperature there globally? Yes. A natural cycle has happened multiple times in the past. It's happening now again. Mm-hmm. Is there anything we can do to change it? Unfortunately, not really. But one thing that we have to do, we have to preserve what we have. We have to figure out ways to preserve our ocean, figure out how can we protect plankton inside the ocean? How can we do that in a way that's sustainable? How can we eliminate plastic waste? How can we do that and eliminate poverty, end poverty at the same time? Nobody on this planet can do that like us. Absolutely.
I'm impressed. You've got it down to a science, and in the oil and gas space, the orphan well projects, the oil and gas industry was not always good in the past with ESG, and just would walk away from wells. And Texas is now really doing a good job of funding and plugging abandoned wells. What I'm now seeing, Captain, is that with the wind farms, I've interviewed folks up with the right whales, and all the deaths that are going on the East Coast is just pathetic. And it's the sounding that they have to do for all of those.
Yeah, the acoustic noises and seismic work and so on and so forth. Yeah,
and it's just killing our wonderful whales. But what I'm seeing across the U.S. is that everybody was saying wind farms are going to last 30 years. No, they're not sustainable from day one without tax subsidies. All the numbers that I have is that with tax subsidies, they are no longer fiscally sustainable after 8 years. Well, they don't become carbon neutral, as we say, carbon neutral until 10 years. So you're supposed to have 20 years of carbon neutral free power. Well, the maintenance is so expensive on these things that you really can't do it to 6 years. So these things are not even fiscally possible.
Well, let's take it even a step further than that, right? Yeah. If you look at wind, right? Wind energy, one thing on land, right? And of course, it's brutal for the environment. It kills all kinds of birds on land and so on and so forth. The first thing what they say once I debate them, they say, well, cats kill a lot more birds, right? Okay, that's true, right? But they don't kill eagles. They don't kill large marine birds. Cats kill little finches and little robins, which there's lots of them there. They don't kill these giant endangered birds. The American eagle, of course, a symbol of strength, a symbol of the United States. Eagles are being slaughtered by these onshore. But offshore, there's a bigger problem. Offshore is a much bigger problem. The carbon footprint to put a plant offshore is about 4.5 times higher than the one on land. So if it's going to take 10 years on land, it's going to take 40 years offshore to do the same thing.
They're not going to last 40 years,
They're not going to last. They're not going to last. They can't last. The problems, of course, with the marine life, what they're doing, there's no doubt about that. Brutal problems. The discharge out of the platforms themselves, right? You have 30 wind turbines, then to one power station, and before it sends this energy ashore. The cooling towers out of these, of course, is creating a massive problem. Millions of gallons of hot water being pumped into the ocean. Again, so you're pulling in hot water, killing the spat that's inside in the ocean, the sea life, killing the plankton inside in the life, then spitting it back out, right? On top of the other ones that you didn't suck up that are just swimming by, you're killing them also. So there's so many problems here. There's so many problems. There's no environmental assessments whatsoever after being carried out. None. Zilch. If this was being done by, say, the former president of the United States,
right,
they would be, and again, I'm non-political. I'm non-political. Democrats, Republicans, none of it means anything to me. But if it was done by the former presidents, they would be held to pay for this. They would be absolute held to pay for this.
You seem more humanitarian and ecologically than political. I don't care. I don't like all politicians. I'm just going to be quite honest with you. I'm not a politician fan.
We're connected at the hip there because again, I don't like Republicans or Democrats. You know, it's the way they spend money. Do you know that at the end? Here's one for your listeners. At the end of the Trump administration, there was a bill passed for $2.5 billion to tackle ocean plastic pollution, right? To collect ocean plastic and to stop it. That money was distributed there under the Biden administration. It was signed off under the Trump administration, and it was handed out over the Biden administration. It is estimated that the $2.9 billion, not million, $billion, that less than 1 metric ton of plastic was actually collected. $2.5 billion of taxpayers' money gone. Absolutely gone.
What could you have done with that amount of money and how many tons? So let's say this again, Captain, for my listeners, because this just irritated me to death. I'm now worked up. $2.9 billion for how many tons did we get?
One
ton?
Less than 1 ton, 900 kilos of plastic. Less than 1 metric ton of plastic. And the $2.5 billion, vamoose, gone, finished. Less than 1 ton of ocean plastic like the money was earmarked for. The money went to write white papers to say how bad oil and gas and these other companies are. And of course, that's where all the money went. The money went to write about to say how bad the problems are, instead of coming up with a solution and doing it. Like the same amount of money, that amount of money with ourselves, we could definitely remove well over 1 million tons of plastic. Well over 1 million tons of plastic. So we do firmly believe that we could probably in a year do 3 to 4 million tons a year of plastic. That's just ourselves. We in the space, if you look at there's very few companies in the world that actually tackle ocean plastic. Very few. Lots of them have the word ocean. It could be for whatever. The word ocean is in there somewhere, but they have nothing to do with the ocean. But again, it is just because it works, right? The hashtag works. So we became a TikTok society. We became a hashtag society. Whatever the popular hashtag is. If it's the media wake up, I think in the morning, really early, these guys, and they all text each other and say, what are we going to go with today? What's going to be the narrative today? The narrative today is going to be collusion, or it's going to be plastic, or it's going to be big oil, or it's going to be Russia, or it's going to be something, right? It's going to be something, whatever it is. They all agree with that, and that's the way we run. Unfortunately, that's the way the environmental world is.
How do we franchise ocean integrity so that we can get you money and then you can fan it out and teach other people? But you got to franchise how you've done it. Does that make sense?
We already do that. We already franchise it there globally right now. We're already doing this, but we stay on top of it there. We hold on to 51% of all the corporations. Again, just to make sure there's no issues there.
I just thought I had a brilliant idea. I went to Oklahoma State. I thought it was brilliant. You've already done it. Okay, this great job.
Yeah, we have a couple of interesting projects there next year. We started working there last year, looking at ways to collect the sargassum, the seaweed that's coming ashore on the coast of Florida and through the Caribbean and so on and so forth. We plan next year of intercepting that off the coast of Fortaleza in Brazil to Cuba. We'll intercept that in the ocean before it ever comes through. So that's an interesting project for us. Of course, the sargassum, once it comes ashore, it rots, it generates methane, kills marine life, it kills animals on the beach. It's absolutely brutal. But we'll intercept it there prior to it ever coming ashore. The reason we'll do it down there, of course, is it's the vast majority of that comes through the Yucatan Straits. And of course, those are waters I'm well familiar with. I spent my whole life on the ocean. So anything on the ocean for me is, it's very easy for me, I guess, like, to tackle ocean problems. I understand the ocean. I definitely understand the ocean than the vast majority of people in the environmental world, which wouldn't be really hard. The environmental world, like I said, it shocks me so much all the time. You have tens of millions of people after creating an economy by destroying other economies, right? They created this. They made themselves relevant by pushing a narrative, which for the most part is a lie. We saw the floods in New York City a few weeks ago. The floods, of course, the first thing I saw, climate change has created a flood in New York, right? So I contacted a friend that's he's in the fire department in New York, and I said, hey, you had bad floods. He said, we did. He said, plastic. He said, there's crap everywhere. He said, the drains are all blocked, right? And I said, my colleagues in the environmental space, and he started laughing. I know what you're going to say. He said, they're saying climate change. They actually want us to pull back on the narrative that they were saying, like, that is plastic waste and trash on the streets in New York. And that's after blocking the drains and creating the floods. And of course, this went totally against what they were saying. They were saying it's climate change, which had nothing to do with that. I saw floods this week in Ireland, right? There was floods where I came from in Ireland, Waterford this week. It was the same thing. Drains got blocked, right? Drains got blocked. There was rain that created floods. Floods have been there since as far back as we can go, right? We know that flooding has been a problem on this planet. I posted a video yesterday where we haven't had rain here. It's the dry season. It's just come toward the end of the dry season. We haven't had rain now for 5 months. And of course, which is normal. There's nothing abnormal about that. But it's going to start raining any day now. We had a small bit of rain there yesterday, and I was getting gas in my car. I drive a gas car, not an electric car. And as I was putting gas in the car, I saw the guys trying to unblock the drains, right? The drains were all blocked up. The first part of the rain arrived and it blocked up the drains straight away. The plastic went in and blocked the drains. And the reason I put up the post on LinkedIn yesterday, under my LinkedIn page, Captin Kieran Kelly, I put it up because I said, they're going to blame climate change for this. Right. This has nothing to do with climate change. This has something to do with a problem like, with local authorities and not a proper waste management program, not alone the developing world. We're very fast, like in the US and Europe, to point our fingers at countries in the developing world. But we have it in New York. We have it in other cities too. We have it in badly managed cities where our politicians, let it be Democrats or Republicans, where our politicians didn't do the right thing, didn't make sure that our cities are clean, our streets are clean, they're full of trash, our trash are going to block up the drains. But when that happened, please do not run with the inconvenient lie and turn around and blame climate change for it. It has nothing to do with climate change. It has to do with bad management.
Captain, you're so refreshing. I love that post on LinkedIn. I almost feel like a stalker. So when you start looking over your shoulder, it's me trying to, because I love your ideas. Everything that you're doing is sensible. And it seems like education is one of our biggest problems coming around the corner. How does somebody, because you're an entrepreneur, you've got that entrepreneurial spirit, you've got the self-motivation that you've had all of your life. How do we talk or get our next generation involved in things? How do we look at that next generation?
I speak with universities all the time, and one of the things that I always say to them, first of all, I always ask the professors to speak before me. They like to speak when I finish, but I fell for that once, only once. I didn't fall for that after that. So I make sure that they have to leave them say whatever they have to say first, and I would come in after that.
Right.
And one thing I always say to the students, I say, please do me a favor. Scrutinize everything you're told. Stop listening to your professors. What they're telling you is not true. And of course, that never goes down well in the universities, but it's the truth. Like, we need, our kids need to start thinking about what they're being told. To tell our kids to live in a basement and climb under a rock and, to survive like that to save our planet, not to have children, not to go on vacation, not to do anything, to become depressed, to second guess, their life as we know it, right?
Right.
Is very harmful for society as a whole. So what I say to the youth is go on vacation, party like a rock star, and save the planet at the same time. And they say, how am I going to do that? So we'll give you a list of hotels to go to. Hotels that, again, that remove, every night you stay there, these hotels are taking 1 and 2 pounds of plastic from the ocean. So you go into that hotel that sponsors cleanups with us, you're actually helping save the planet. You go along and you buy a beer and they're charging 3 or 4 cents on a beer. You can drink a beer and save the planet. How cool is that? Think about it in a more positive way. Go back to basics.
That's cool.
Be a kid, be a teenager, party. Do not listen to what they're telling you. That is not the way forward.
Party like a rock star at a hotel that supports the Captin Kelly programs, and you're going to save the planet. How cool is that?
100%.
Where's the T-shirt? Party like a rock star on Captin Kelly. I like that. We're going to have that made.
Yeah, well, we have to get back to basics, right? We have to get back to basics, and we have to look at things in a more positive way. How can we fix the problems we have? And they're all fixable, right? That's the killing part about this. We can fix the problems that we actually have. If you're looking at pollution, there's no doubt about it. Pollution is the single biggest threat to our planet.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. We see the dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico that are expanding, constantly expanding. And of course, creating your problems. It's all kinds of pollution from say fertilizers to different chemicals to so on and so forth that are creating it. So we have to look at and make sure we have a healthier ocean. But the transitions we're talking about are ludicrous, are absolutely ludicrous. I see the work that the likes of Exxon and these guys are doing is absolutely amazing. I see Exxon, at this stage right now, will be a world leader in recycling of plastics. And of course, a complete circularity with them. Exxon, now they have a plant that's up and running there in Texas. That's again been very, very successful in getting breaking the plastic down back into an oil and turning that oil back into plastics again. Complete circularity, what they're doing. Exxon are looking at about a dozen more projects there globally, and I applaud them. I'm an environmentalist, and I applaud an oil company for actually doing the right thing. Which is great. If we look at where the amount of money that we're spending, just like the story regarding the money that was spent for the 1 ton of plastic, the $2.5 billion. Imagine if that $2.5 billion was spent on R&D work to produce an engine, can burn fossil fuels if it is, but can be more fuel efficient. If we spend a fraction of the cost that we're spending right now into more fuel efficient vehicles, there'd be something to go. We're selling hybrids in the US for the last few years. And these hybrids are saying, wow, these cars can do 35 miles to the gallon. We've been selling cars in Europe that can do 35 miles to the gallon with 40 years, but they were never sold in the United States, right? So, to reduce consumption, if that's what we need to do, there's technologies already there. There's engines already there. If we look, I guess, at ways through research and look at ways to actually reduce fuel consumption, there's many ways to do it. We work in West Africa. I've seen West Africa. I've seen what's going on with the cobalt mines. I've seen what the exploitation of people inside in these areas. I've seen where children are mining for 15 and 20 cents a day so we can feel good. Is that a way forward? If anyone thinks that is the right thing to do, shame on them. Absolutely shame on them.
Those mines are horrific. And you see the kids in there working, and you see the parents and the moms working for 15 cents a day. That's, I I get worked up on that.
Well, the reason with our collection, we touched on there a few minutes back about the collections, of course, is to keep kids, leave kids be kids, kids be kids. Make sure your kids get education. I posted up a post there some while back, which was the most horrific sight I think I've ever seen. I'm a pretty tough guy. I boxed through school. I played rugby. I could go toe to toe with Mike Tyson. I'd take him out. So I'm a pretty tough guy. But I was in a place in North Jakarta, and I saw these children working in a sweatshop. They were taking mussels, shellfish. They were shucking shellfish. One of the kids was still in diapers. And they were working it. She was in diapers. I posted up the post there last year, or earlier this year. I'll share the post with you after this. But it broke my heart, right?
That's awful.
I cried the whole way home. And again, I'm a tough guy. I cried the whole way home. I said, like, what's happening? What are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing to people? Why we're exploiting people more now than ever before? And of course, we're doing nothing. We're doing nothing about it. So we have to look at the elephant in the room. And of course, that is pollution. It is child labor, it's poverty. So to connect the dots, that's what's so important to us. That's what's so...
Wow.
I see it all the time. I see it in India. I remember being in India. I was just outside of Chennai. No, it wasn't Chennai. It was actually Indore in India.
Right.
And there were these kids down the bottom of a yard. The temperature was well over 100 degrees. It was so hot. And I saw these kids. I was with a group, a whole delegation, 3 or 4 Americans and a whole bunch of Indian folks. And there were these kids working in the bottom of the yard, and I walked down towards the kids, and they kept calling me back, saying, "No, Mr. Kelly, come here, let's talk." But I wanted to see what was going on, right? And these children were mixing up this red dye with some sand and cement, and it was like, and I looking at them, it was like I pictures of my own kids when they were on the beach making sandcastles, right? They were putting them inside these plastic molds. And they were making these brick pavers, right? With this red dye. The kids were covered in red dye. They had no shoes on. They were skinny. They were hungry. And there was a little girl, and she looked up at me, and she had these amazing curly hair and big brown eyes, and she was covered in this crap. And I had 2 bottles of water, 2 plastic bottles of water, I might add, in my hand. And I handed one of the bottles, and I said to her in English, I said, "How are you?" And I was surprised. She spoke English. She said to me, "I'm good." And I said, "You like your job?" And she just shook her head no. And, and again, I cried again, right? So the guy came down to me that had the yard, and he said, "Mr. Kelly," he says, "don't mind what's going on here. Come up and talk to me." I said, "Buddy, I'd like to knock your teeth out right now." And it's, and of course my team would say, "You can't speak to him like that. You can't speak to him like that." And I was just appalled. I'm a father. I have a soul, right? I have, again, I've seen this happen over and over and over and over again. And now we speak about how we're going to transition and how we're going to make the world a better place, so we can feel good about making our cappuccino in the morning for breakfast when it's produced by solar energy or wind energy or whatever. But we're going to, excuse my English, we're going to piss all over the developing world by doing this?
No.
It's not an option. It's really not an option.
No. Captin Kelly, I can tell that I need about 6 more therapy sessions with you, because this is not a discussion. This is a therapy session, and I just really appreciate everything that you've got going on out there. But I would like to have more follow-up sessions with you to find out what's going on. And I'm over here about ready to tear up. This stinks. What happened to party with Captin Kelly? But thank you for stopping by the podcast today. Tell us how people can support you and how people can reach out to you to help eliminate poverty.
A couple of different ways. One of the ways, of course, is to follow me there on LinkedIn, Captin Kieran Kelly, or look at us as Ocean Integrity Group. They're on LinkedIn, or the same on Facebook, or so on and so forth. No matter what corporation, or say you a little coffee shop, sell your cup of coffee and remove say one plastic bottle,
Right.
For the ocean, for every cup of coffee you sell. Again, something really, really simple, really simple. What will that cost? A penny or two for a cup of coffee? I mean, it's absolutely nothing. But on the bigger scale, like, it removes hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tons of plastic. We just need more and more companies on there. Our goal is to get into the millions of tons of plastic a year. That's what we have to do. So again, something really simple. How cool would it be for your restaurant, say, for your restaurant, that you can have on, it's like the countdown in the US for St. Patrick's Day. You see the clock in the bar and it's ticking all the way down. But to say, have something similar, that how many bottles did you pull, the equivalent weight of bottles did you pull from the ocean on a yearly basis? And we send the data every month, every week, that you can keep increasing that, to show, that people going into your bar to drink some drinks, party like a rock star, and you're going to clean the planet by doing it. That's what we have to do. There's no
I
other way
love
to
that. And I'll tell you, so we're going to make sure your LinkedIn information is in there, and whatever we can do, we'd sure love to throw our weight behind getting the story out for you, because that's what this is all about, is getting out there. So I can't wait to talk to you again and buy you a beer so I can party with you and save the planet.
Of course.
What a great way to do that. Thank you so much, Captain, for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having us on.